And we are live, people. You can reveal our beautiful faces.
Yes.
Today we have, actually have to move a bit, a friend of mine and of ours, Daniel, who is a Brazilian artist. That's it. You're a Brazilian artist and you live in Brussels.
Yes, for the past 4 years now.
It has been 4 years.
4 years already.
And we know each other for about 2 years.
Yes.
Perfect, I like that. So I said you were an artist.
Yes.
That's, I believe, the most interesting thing because I'm a completely unartistic person. And you already did even an exposition.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, here in Brussels this year I participated in quite a few exhibitions actually. It was a very exciting year for me because, you know, every move to another country is a whole start over, right? And in Brazil, I had done the start over already because I used to work in international relations, and then I changed back in Brazil to art, like just myself. I'm gonna be an artist, and I went ahead trying to discover what that means. And
discover yourself, discover the art through yourself.
Yeah. So yeah, after 2 years working in a museum, and then I got a studio, and I was already very much involved in the scene there. So it was also happening in a way. But then when I came to do a course in London, an art course, and then I came to Brussels to join my partner. So ever since, it was a whole start over. And this year was when, you know, like these 4 years of work and meeting people like you guys, all the things were coming together at the same time. So it was very
Really
exciting
exciting.
year. Yeah.
There's so many things that I'm curious about. But what do you like about art? Making art?
Well, my main thing at the time when I decided to, I always loved art, of course, like everybody who is an artist. Mostly they start from as a child, early age, but it really just became a priority to me when I was working in international relations back then, and I felt that I was too. I didn't have enough room for self-expression, but of course it's my thing. It's not like, it's not against the profession or against it. I just felt that I needed to talk more, to express myself in different ways that my current job wasn't allowing me. And there was a government job also, so there were these kind of tensions of, I cannot criticize like my boss.
So you hate the government?
No, but you know, like always there are good things and bad things, and when I wanted to, you know, like go to manifestations against one race or one less rights about one thing, I was always worried that what the consequences would be.
You don't know who will see what and what will follow from that.
Yeah. There is a specific image that you need to keep
and that was one thing, and also because I just always loved art, maybe an idealized version of art that I made in my head, but I wanted to explore that, and I said, you know, I rather do it now while I'm young and I have the time to, you know, like try it out, then I'm later 40 years old, I have 2 kids or people dependent on me. So now it's the time, I'm gonna do it, and I did it. And it's been fun and hard in some ways, but no regrets.
Worth it?
Huh?
It's worth it?
Yeah, so you know, like when things start happening, that's when you really, when you work, sometimes you lose perspective because it's always an effort, right? You're always struggling, something new now. But these months, these days, I was looking back and thinking, wow, what a journey to get here, to be in Belgium, to be participating in exhibitions here, to now getting involved in the art world of this new country. So
how much you have grown.
like a little boy who always wanted to do that, and like really doing it now. So.
At first it must have been difficult to decide to do this change. I mean, from the international relations and a government job, and to jump into the art field. I suppose that it was.
Especially because it was very, there were no plans. It was just, maybe it was a little risky of me, but if I hadn't done it that way, I don't know what would have happened. So
you can never win without the risk, without taking risk. You can never,
And you always think, oh, maybe, what about the future? But I've been doing well so far. I have people who love me, who are with me, and we support each other. So I think that's...
The risk paid off.
Yeah,
so far. And you already have one exhibition only with your work.
This year I did. Yeah, it was an exhibition here in Brussels. It was only me, and it started out with my guide. Yeah, it was a publication that I did ever since.
The eyes.
That's maybe a good way to say it.
Yes, that's a better way.
But the format is like that. It was just an interest of mine. After I got here, I was just it was my first time in Europe, and we always hear, like these big stories about the developed world, and we aspire to be so much like Europe in many ways. So when I got here, and of course I knew already about colonization, it's something that we have in schools, we talk about it, like we have in our minds, we are always, a lot of people think we are less, and like unconsciously you already think you are like underdeveloped, and maybe one day you'll get there. So all these identities, I guess, just came together when I got here, and I realized how the richness that was built during the time of colonization is still so present here. And you have people like me who come as tourists, and what we come to see, it's basically what was built back then, And so I was like curious to see what exactly was built here. And I was living in Brussels, and Brussels is the capital of Europe, so I thought it was a good symbolic gesture. So what was built in this capital, let's say, that's like the smallest country, like one of the small examples of colonialism, that was built during with that system. So that's when I started mapping all the touristic places, palaces, castles, monuments, and stuff that make.
We can show the map, maybe, just to open it. And
sure. Should I do that?
There is a map.
Yeah, it's a map. So it's kind of a map, a guide that you can just read, but you can also follow, but it's not so easy to follow because this map, it's not a recent map, it's a map from 1889.
Okay.
It's a map that I found, it's an antique that I found at the flea market.
Okay.
Wow.
And it's...
We're here in St. James.
Yeah, and most of the things that I talk about here were built, let's say, before, after the map was actually created. So that's why I say you can't really see, because colonization started around that time. So...
What is your actual contribution in that exhibition? Do you talk about each building that is somehow connected to colonization, or what do you focus on? What is your...
Yeah, the guide was kind of the starting point of a research. It was in a way a straightforward kind of work, let's say. I wanted to do this and I wanted to say this with this, but in the exhibition I had the possibility of being less direct on the way of approaching the subject. So I had more of my visual works that don't have as much information, but that play with our imagination. Yeah. So I also, when I was doing this, things that I found on the street that make reference to colonization, like photo albums, like postcards, stamps, like commemorative stamps from the Congo, like plates, commemorative plates that celebrate Leopold II. So all these things I interacted with and just tried to make it a little bit poetic, the way of responding to them. There was less straightforward than this, but they kind of complement each other.
Yeah, that's perfect approach.
And was there something very interesting that stood out to you? Because you were doing a lot of research, I figure, about colonization and about the whole history of Belgium, in a way.
Yeah.
So was there something where you were saying to yourself, wow, like I'm surprised?
Well, many things. The learning about Leopold itself was a surprise because I had no idea about him at all before I came here. I don't know if you did. Yeah, and it's not very known. Like after you're here a couple of years, you realize that people might know about it, but they don't really know that much this information, and they don't know that much how that affected the Congo and how, like they are still very poor, and here they're still very rich, and they don't. I think that my surprise is that people don't make this kind of connection on this cause and consequence in a way.
Yeah.
They think that's just how it is.
Yeah. That's how we were created, and
Yeah.
from the beginning on, this country is poor, this country is rich, and that's how it stays. Really interesting.
And one of the things that is, I believe it's not really a topic in Belgium, because they have this colonial history, but I'm not sure how much it is talked about.
Yeah.
Because I didn't go to a school, for example, in Belgium.
Well, yeah, what I heard is that they in schools they don't really approach it very much. They either avoid it, so whenever it comes up, they just let's go to the next topic. So they don't approach it. And one of the things that I've heard, like I've been attending and participating in some conferences where I talk about this, and people talk about their other actions also of decolonization, and they say that here it's very like the way of talking about this is very they don't really do it in comparison to other countries.
It's not so open and not so much in depth.
It's something that they just never went through the process of reassessing that part of their history. So that's why I think at this moment this became so relevant in a way here for many people in Belgium, because we never really talked about it. I never saw that, and so I get a lot of interest on it because
what
of that.
is the response? This is what I guess there was some very positive response, and people were very interested to learn more.
It's mixed. It's mixed reactions. Okay. Yes.
There's some negativity?
Yes.
How come?
Really? Why? I mean,
because I think when you come to talk about something like that, people get very defensive very fast.
Because you're not sending a particular message, something like, right? I mean,
it's because they feel attacked mostly.
Is it Belgian people that you have this with?
Belgian people, like you have people who were in the Congo, for instance, and they were expelled or they returned after the independence. Like in the war broke out there. So, but it's mixed. I feel that Congolese people that I've met here, or Congolese, or people who have an African descent, or who are more open to this decolonization view of the world, they are more open to it, and they like the fact that I'm a Brazilian, that I'm not necessarily they prefer that I'm an outsider talking about this, because sometimes they're accused of not being neutral when they talk about it.
The Belgians?
The Congolese, for instance. Congolese institutions and groups, whenever they talk about it, other people accuse them of not being neutral. Yeah.
Okay.
So they are glad to see that other people have a similar feeling, have a similar view of that, and it was very randomly. I never planned to have that kind of interaction with them. It was after it was over that I got in touch with other organizations. And from another side, some people say, you're an outsider, you have no place talking about this.
I don't understand why. Are you sending some particular message with the whole exhibition and everything, except for really like this is part of history, so we should really look at it, we should know more, and using your imagination to present in a way that the affairs in this.
That's kind of how I feel. I feel that it's something that I've been talking about recently. They say that I have no place talking about this because I'm not from here.
Everybody has a place talking about it. It's not about even whether you're here or not. It's part of our world history in a way.
Exactly.
And now you live here.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, you are affected. I mean, by this piece of history because you kind of inhabit this lens right now.
Exactly. And I feel that's very mistaken because we are all very much involved in all these dynamics. Like tourism itself is a dynamic that is also inherited from another way of life, of another system of beliefs, that makes you think of a place as exotic, another place is developed, another place is underdeveloped. These are all things that are in our minds, and that's kind of what I'm trying to approach here. If you read it, you're gonna see that I make my own point of view, saying it's not about accusing anyone of anything, because it doesn't matter necessarily what happened in the past. Of course, we have to think about it, but it's how do we talk about it today? How do we present it today? Because most of these things, they don't have context, So in the end, they are reinforcing a narrative that's glorious of colonization. That you have a statue of Leopold that he's in the glorious. Oh, you're saying he was a great king. Doesn't matter whatever he did. Or if you have I don't know, like a big castle that's very beautiful. People who come from another country, they say, well, maybe that it was worth it. Look how beautiful it is, Like they did a great thing with colonization. So these are things that are implicit on the way we live our cities, and that I just want to bring a alternative,
which definitely exists. I mean, I don't know. In my interpretation, probably it could be interpreted as something great for the nation. I mean, for Belgium, I guess it was great because it brought money, it brought capital. You were able to build all of these buildings, but for actually the people who were in the corners, I don't know.
On the other side.
Yes, exactly, and both sides exist, and as you say.
But is that the connection that people are making?
Don't see it.
I feel yes. I feel this debate happened very recently. As I arrived here and as I finished this, I was very surprised to know that there was a little bit of a movement going on and where these things were starting to be debated and getting, let's say, a mainstream attention. Even also after the United States, the Charlottesville attacks. I don't know if you remember where they had rallies, neo-Nazis.
No, Charlottesville was something else.
It's the right-wing parties who,
because they were trying to take down the Confederate monuments.
Right.
And the right-wing, like they say that they're neo-Nazis, they went out protesting, saying, no, they have to keep it. And so after that, I feel that things really broke.
Escalated.
And so I'm happy to contribute to that debate.
Absolutely.
However,
it's difficult to talk about history, right? Because what many people are doing is they look at history, but they apply today's standard to something that happened 200 years ago. And that's why some people maybe see it as an attack, even though you don't mean it like that. Because that's also that was the controversy about what happened in the US with the statues of the Confederates. That people, I believe some people, of course, they're like rednecks and they're like, okay, we need to we are proud in the south and so on, but I believe also for some people it's just that you're changing parts of history because it doesn't fit in with today's standards.
Yeah.
And it's a very difficult question to answer what is right and is wrong in this context.
Of course.
Because
but if you think about it, at the past, you know, like the people who are protesting today, they didn't have any chance of actually protesting back then. You know, the black people in the United States, they could even talk against a monument for Confederate. But
in general, black,
but
white. I mean, if you're against the system that was, you know, from the top at that point, you didn't have chance to protest and to express your opinion. Yeah.
But the what I bring here is the same thing about the U.S. and about Belgium and about many other capitals of Europe. Okay, the things are there. Maybe you don't need to bring them all down. Maybe you don't need to destroy everything. Maybe you don't need to put them, let's say, in a museum. But if they're gonna be there, contextualize. There is a plaque. There is background information. There is, you know, because it's. Otherwise, it's just standing there, and it's just one view that's being said. And nowadays, it's a pluralist society. I mean, like Brussels, it's such an international city in terms of Europe, because there's Europeans from all over, but you have Brazilians, Latin Americans, African.
But I prefer this much more than what you're suggesting with giving a context.
And that's why I did this, because I just give the context.
Yes.
I just tell how does this relate to the colonization period. It's not there,
And people
so
start discussing. There are many interpretations of one story. I think that's what we start to discover nowadays in
Because it's a
modern times.
I'm saying this because it's a fine line as well. Because if you start changing history, because you don't see it fit for today, then where does it start and where does it end? You know, that's why I like the idea of giving more information more than removing information. If you know what I mean.
It's more like stimulating the dialogue and the conversations from all points of views, either the colonizers or the ones that come from countries that were colonized, and just having this open debate, saying that each of us actually took it and interpreted it in a different way. We lived it in a different way. And this has, and that's why I am very much against this notion, and I see it not only, of course, in terms of colonies, but in history in general. When somebody says, "Okay, you are not affected," for example, so you have no right to speak. How come? I mean, why? I'm still part of this.
Because in that sense, then nobody. It's
we are all
pointless
interdependent. All countries, you know, are related somehow. I mean that, you know, the events actually impact, you know, like us globally. Even before the globalization came, the events still impacted, you know. Rather, I mean, it was national, but it
colonization was the first wave of globalization.
Yes, exactly.
If you think about it,
each of us has the right to actually have an opinion, express it, debate it, and say how I lived it from my point of view, and then you know. But it's sometimes hard to put yourself into the shoes of the others and to say, okay, you again have a legitimate point because, I come from here, I saw it that way, I experienced it that way, but you come from there, it's different, so we saw that, and I guess it's hard to break this barrier, but I think it's happening. I think that now that we are progressing to a level where we really start to, put ourselves into the shoes of others, and then, I'm hopeful that these debates will be more and more open without the accusation part, you know, because it just doesn't make sense to accuse. I mean, none of us were directly, you know, the perpetrators, or directly none of us, but we're all,
I have a friend who asked me, do you really see Leopold just as a bad person? It's an interesting question. It's an interesting question, but it's not the right question.
No.
Because it's not about being bad or good. This is all very relative terms. Because from one side, like you said, for Belgium, it was 100% good.
Yeah.
There are nothing against it. But on the other side, there are other people it's bad. So when I say this, it's not like Leopold was evil and Belgium in consequence is evil. But it's more let's face facts and reflect about how we talk about it today. How do I approach it today? Because what's done, it's done. But
Exactly.
we have the opportunity of facing our history every day and talk about it differently in daily life. Yeah.
And more together, more united, because I think that's like 2 centuries ago, for example, there wouldn't be so many opportunities where a Congolese person, you say? Yeah, Congolese person will sit with a Belgian person, will sit with a Brazilian person, will sit with a Bulgarian person, and for example, we all together discuss how we experience this part of history. This is something that's happening now, and it's new, and it's an opportunity actually to really see, wow, how many points of view there are, and
I like how differentiated it is what you're saying, because humans are more complex than being good or bad.
Yes. Exactly.
But the other feature of humans is that they tend to glorify what they like, and they try and they make things that they don't like worse than it is. And one recent example is Gandhi, for example, where they, some stuff was revealed about him that he liked to. He hated women, but he wasn't like sexist, but he really disliked them to some degree. And he was doing some weird sex things where he was lying with women naked in bed as an act of, he called it some spiritual development, but it was just weird shit. And then people see it through their modern eyes, and then they're conflicted because Gandhi is this ideal. And then you see what they were as private people, and they were just people. And something similar happened. Not Marx, but some other public figure of the 20th century, or country called. No, they published some letters. Maybe it was Freud or someone else. It doesn't matter, but they published again some private letters of some intellectual figure, and it turned out that this person was in private quite racist and bigoted. Or Charles Darwin as well. He was also he was writing in the 18th century or 19th century style about the black people when he went to Africa. And then people see it today, and then they see it, of course, through the modern lens. And then again, what you're doing is being differentiated, but many people are not. They see it either good or bad, you know.
Yeah, that's
okay, he was a good guy, but then I
use.
saw this thing. Okay, now he's an asshole, and I disregard it. But it's more complex than that.
I mean, the thing is, there are more people who can be balanced than others, because for some people that consider Leopold as bad because he killed a little bit the system that the government laid out in Congo, killed more people statistically than the Holocaust.
Oh, wow.
What do you mean by that?
What is that?
Well, I mean, because there was an estimate of like 20 million people in Congo, in the area that wasn't even like a national state at the time, but the area had around 20 million people already living there. And when the government, the Belgian king came, in 20 years the population reduced to 10 million people.
So imagine what the difference that is.
Forced labor and killings. They had forced labor in the sense that one of the biggest atrocities that's most known is that the system of quota that they implemented for many years, which was they kidnap your wife, and you're only gonna be sure that she's okay if you meet the quota of rubber that you have to meet. You have to produce.
Rubber.
Yeah.
You only have to. Yeah. Okay,
if you produce the quota, she is gonna be okay.
So it's blackmail. They can blackmail the people to work. Like
and the things, one of the most common things, also that's most known, some of the proof that the quotas were being kept was the number of hands they were cutting. Because if they don't meet the quota, the punishment would be to lose a hand or to lose a feet or to lose like a leg. And this was
the quotas were crazy.
It was like
super easy to meet.
And it could depend of the person counting the quota. And so there are many accounts of that time where they say that there was a lot of abuse with this quota system, where Leopold never went there, but the people on the ground, they dehumanized the Africans for many years. The colonization comes with that also, with this dehumanization process of the black person or the native people in other continents. So for them it was just like killing like an animal or something. They didn't care about
that helped
it.
them, I suppose, to go through the process as well. It's a psychological thing that I suppose
I guess, yeah.
so that you can really, I don't know, do such atrocities. In order to do it, you have to kind of have the perception that this thing that is standing, I mean, this human being is not equal to you. It's not a human being, you know, because otherwise you might not go through it. So I suppose it's, it's a way
that
of
was the whole
delineation
justification of colonization, was this idea of the Western European being the
upper,
goal, the superior, and
standards,
everything else underneath.
Everything else is
So you go to these
different.
tribes at the time, they just
They were chilling there.
yeah. So but anyways,
yeah, but that's very interesting. I mean,
I wasn't aware, that's why I'm asking. I don't know the
exactly.
details
And
about
I
the
think
Belgian.
most people don't know. That's why it's good that we gave an example.
thank you.
Cheers.
Bringing it to actual times, I think there is even a strong connection with Brazil election.
Oh, wow, what a smooth transition right here.
I mean, if you want to.
No, go ahead, because one of the things that why we invited you is because you're Brazilian.
Yeah.
And all I know is that the Brazilian elections are quite decisive and that the country is divided, right? And I know that the last president was almost impeached, or one of you
Was
got impeached.
Yeah.
Was it the woman who got impeached?
Yes, the first woman.
And I even heard that she was very good, but she messed with the wrong power fractions, and that they actually screwed her over, and that her impeachment wasn't as justified as it was made out to be.
Yeah.
But that's my layman's knowledge. So.
Yeah, I mean, there is such a long context that has been growing for, I think, since 2013.
Okay.
That was when things really started to change in terms of this political turmoil that Brazil is going through. Because until we had, Lula, you probably know Lula, he was the president before Dilma. He was, and still is, one of the most popular and beloved politicians to ever show up in Brazil. And the reason is because he's from a leftist government that tried to get in power for many years. They were persecuted during the dictatorship. And after, I think, 10 years of redemocratization, he was elected. There was a strong fear of communism taking over Brazil and destroying all the institutions.
In the 90s or 2000s.
It was in 2002 that he was elected. And he spent 8 years in power. They didn't take over. There was no...
The Communist card is always a strong one. They play it a lot.
They play it a lot.
America,
Yeah, exactly. And that's the main card that's being played now. Communism and corruption. You know, and the link that I made with Congo is because the prime minister, the first prime minister of the Congo, after the independence, he was killed by the Belgian government and by the CIA together. And the reason was they accused him because he was trying to make Congo independent and less dependent on Belgium and other powers. And he tried to approach the West, and the West didn't want to give it away in a way.
Yeah.
And he approached the Soviet Union, and of course, in the Cold War, the Soviet Union backed him.
That was a perfect,
So he was accused of communism, of being a communist, and of being corrupt. I don't even know anymore the corruption charges.
And
but
he was not. He actually was searching for allies.
He was a nationalist leader that wanted to lead the way to independence, and that never happened. It was they killed it, and after that there has been war ever since. You know, like civil war broke out. There was a dictatorship, supported by the West, that just kept things, like the the materials they needed for.
The status
What is
quo,
the time frame when?
It was in 1960.
In the 1960s.
It was the first African
Or changing
independence,
the
if I'm not
regimes.
mistaken.
Exactly at that point.
Yeah.
Americans also,
And-
South America.
Yeah. The African independence, I think it was the first one. And but until today, he's also being But what I wanted to talk about was this part of the corruption and the communist threat that are the main allegations that play with people's imagination.
Always used.
And it comes today when it's been revealed that a lot of these political divisiveness in many countries are happening through social media, right? Through fake news in social media. And this is a little bit of what's happening in Brazil.
Yeah? As well?
I believe
Okay, do you use
that's
the
only
communist
half of the
trend?
bill, though. That it's a fake news, because you're also more confronted, I believe, with other beliefs on social media, and that makes you more opinionated in general.
So you're
in a way.
easier to fall in the trap? Or?
And you're more to, I believe you tend more to go to your own position, because when you are confronted with conflicting views, and on social media you somehow become more, you increase your own bubble.
Okay.
You get more,
Okay,
you're
defensive.
less,
You get
yes,
more
you want to
defensive.
engage less with others, even though that's contradictory, but that's what I mean, social media confronts you so much with other things that somehow you get more focused on your own position.
Okay, instead of actually having a dialogue, open a bit your mind, listen,
Exactly.
change your opinion or hear the others, you actually get more stuck to your
To your
position
bubble,
because you're
yeah.
defensive,
More
exactly,
of the
because
same.
it's more of the same.
But of course, there has been many mistakes from these governments. There has been, like collaboration with corruption. But it is a very hard thing to talk about corruption in a country like Brazil, because it doesn't differentiate in left or right corruption.
It's everywhere.
It's
sadly,
everywhere.
Right? Yes.
So
absolutely.
the thing
problem, yeah.
in Bulgaria,
absolutely, yeah.
well,
We'll start with B. Coincidence.
No, it's
that's exactly it. It's very hard to delimit when a person is against one political figure or another because of corruption, because it doesn't stand. You know that the opposition
it's not an
is
argument anymore
also.
because everybody are corrupted, so you can't have it as a justification. For example, I'm against these people because they're corrupted, because the people you support are also corrupted, so kind of it has
But
to be
one
different
side
arguments,
says,
right?
no, mine is not
Yeah,
as corrupt.
of
The other
course,
one, no,
of
mine is not as
course,
corrupt. Of
yes.
course.
How does it manifest, this corruption, concretely? What's your experience?
Yeah, with your, for example, in Brazil, how does it manifest? With us, it's stealing the Euro funds, and absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm
Sorry?
just giving an example.
Yeah.
Because he asked how does it manifest this corruption
Because
in
it
Brazil.
gets always talked about, but it's always abstract.
And for example,
Exactly.
with us,
It's always abstract.
it's like it's very with us. It's very concrete in Bulgaria. We steal the Euro funds. We don't use the money for what they're promised. For example, they fund something to build a new road or whatever. It turns out that all of the money are stolen. Then we don't have a new road. It turns out that the judges are corrupted. In order everything to be, under the table. And it's like. It's actually obvious what the corruption is. So
In your case, yes.
whether it's I'm curious whether there is a parallel or it's something more.
There is a parallel. Like you said, corruption is a very abstract concept and many meanings and many because it's something that unites us all. Also, are you against corruption?
But
Yes.
yeah.
You can't see it on the video, but I'm
I can switch it.
So, but what I mean is,
If
you
I
are.
ask you, are you against hunger? Yeah.
Yes, of course. You are against corruption, you're against corruption, and I'm against corruption. And if you ask anybody, of course we are all against corruption. But a lot of people don't think of how they also perpetuate corruption.
Yes.
So this is I think that's the biggest difficulty nowadays to talk about corruption, because of course corruption unites, and when you have one case of corruption in one place, you can just say, But the truth is, corruption is like the smoke screen, and you can just say it without talking what has really been until the corruption charges started happening. What has been the main reasons people are against?
Yeah.
You know, like Lula, Dilma, and they like. I remember I grew up in a very conservative house. I grew up. My father, like sexist. Not my father, but my whole family. You know, like it's a middle class. Family. I wouldn't. I don't know, upper middle class. At least in the city, the small city that we grew up, it was the higher society, let's say. So my whole circle was very conservative, was very sexist, homophobe, and these are things that you don't really realize when you're younger. But I remember, you know, like how when I was 12, 11 when Lula was elected, but I remember that ever since that happened, he was always talked about as, because he made a program to give money to the poor per month, like a small stipend, like 50 reais, which is like 10 euros. It was very little, but it was just a help, because Brazil is a country of it was a country of misery, real misery, of hunger, where people died of hunger, you know. So he created this thing just to reduce misery, the grave state of misery. Ever since that, he's been accused of trying to take over the country, trying to co-opt the masses to always be on his side.
Money to use the money for that it's political move.
They say it's a political move, but you know, in a country, because in Europe they do it, it's just a welfare state, you know, like they have in Europe, they have in Canada, they have in Australia. Much more than 10 euros.
People actually don't work their whole lives.
Students receive like 500 euros here, I've heard, when they don't have a job and they left their parents' house.
It depends on your
And this is not a country of miserable, dying of hunger people. You know, so for me it's so crazy when you hear a middle-class person saying that this is a communist thing, trying to take over a country just because there was. And it's a great policy for me, especially, I think, because the children, because it's for the children, it's not really for the parents that receive it. The children that the parents receive it so they can buy food for the children, because one of the Brazil's problem was school evasion. They get out of school because the parents make them work.
Yeah, because they
on the farms, I suppose.
On the farms or on the fire.
What is typical?
On the car. Do you know, like when you stop by the car? What's the name of that?
To clean at the stoplight.
The stoplight, yeah.
And
to clean, sell gum and stuff. So parents take them out of school, so because they have to work like 6, 7 years old of age. They are in the streets already. So this was a policy to you don't need to put your child in school, but you have to prove that your child is subscribed in high school, in school.
Yeah.
So it was not, you know, like a terrible policy, like they say you're just giving money to the poor and they're never gonna learn with.
And does it still exist?
It still exists. It's under a lot of threat with this new guy, because this new guy is basically against everything that has changed in this
period.
Governments. Yes, in these 13 years.
And he's a military guy.
He's a former military guy. I think he's still a military guy. I don't know. Yeah, he talks about the dictatorship, the military dictatorship that we had over the 20th century, and he wants it back. That's one of the main things that he says. The only way to fix Brazil is going back to a military dictatorship, because military people are just honest.
They know.
Yeah, that's his theory or hypothesis. And so, but also you have LGBT rights. He's also actually he became famous, this guy, by going against LGBT rights.
Which ones concretely?
They wanted to create a training for the teachers in schools, so that the teachers would be able to talk about sexuality in a less, let's say, in a way that created more equality and tolerance. For instance, it was a training so the teachers, if there was a gay student in school, like I was, and he was suffering bully or stuff like that, instead of telling the kid to stop being gay, they would talk to the kid, they would talk to the other children and try to respect the difference. It was just this kind of measures to talk about, in order to attack homophobia, to attack transphobia, and all these things in a school level, because that's when the first experience with violence happens.
Yeah. The boys see that someone is different. Right?
Yeah, I mean, me and Fernando, we have a very specific and true experience with that, with school homophobia, because they found out that we were gay in high school.
You were both in the same high school?
And we were both in the same high school.
How old were you?
17. Okay, 18. It was just when we turned 18. We were kissing in a party, in the bathroom, in a party.
Okay.
And one guy filmed us and with his cell phone, and he made it circle.
Yeah.
When we got to school next Monday, all the classes from high school were in front of my class, screaming stuff, like gay, faggot.
They didn't know before that. I mean, before that.
They didn't know before
your friends didn't know that.
Nobody knew.
Nobody knew.
My family didn't know. I was really in the starting closet phase. So it was very traumatic, especially for me, because my father didn't know. Nobody knew. So I was very scared of this taking over and putting me out there.
Like a fire that spreads.
Yeah. Friends, I mean.
So, our friends, they were on our side, but of course they didn't know because we were so scared. We didn't want people to know, so we denied it.
Oh, okay.
So our thing was not saying, yes, I'm gay and you have to respect my freedom, my right. It was like, no, we're not. I'm sorry. But we did have one. The biggest problem was not the children, but it was how the school reacted to it.
Yeah, how?
The coordinators of the school, because one friend of ours, she asked the school to do something about it. The people are
involved.
People, and the school coordinators, they were there, laughing at the whole situation and just watching. And this one friend of ours, she was we didn't have courage to defend ourselves at the time. We were just trying to not be gays. And yeah, it was very rough. And then she went to the school and was talking to them. You have to do something about the homophobia, about the situation. And their response was, if they did it, they have to take the consequences.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. But that's not the case, because actually, when you're a school kid, you're still a kid. I mean, you depend on the guidance of these teachers and pedagogues there and whatever. They're put there in order to take a form of responsibility and a part of this responsibility. I mean, if you're 30 or whatever, in a way, maybe, yeah, but if you're still a kid, I mean, that's not even correct in theoretical terms.
And they told her, if you continue to bring us problems, we're going to expel you. So
thank you twice.
Yeah, so it was very rough in terms of no support from anybody at the moment. It was just us three trying to get by and wait. Well, anyways,
three is you, Fernando, your partner,
and their friend.
The friend of yours.
Yeah, this one friend. A few friends, they really were with us. Yeah.
At least, Yeah.
So that was a good side because we know who was there back
Exactly.
then, and they still are today. Because one of the main things that this guy wants to go against is any kind of LGBT rights advancement. You know, like if it's gay marriage, or we already have gay. You can marry, do the civil union. You cannot.
Okay.
But it's not a law. It's just like a
You can sign in a way.
You can sign, yeah.
Similar, yeah. But I guess in front of God or whatever.
no, not church, just the state.
exactly.
Yeah.
But this is still good. I mean,
It's
because
very
it
good,
puts you
and it
in
was the
same-
other government.
Oh, okay.
The former one.
Yeah, the former one. So all these social advancements that they promoted, it's viewed today as corruption of moral values, of family values. It's the destruction of the tradition of family.
But that's changing the meaning of the word corruption, right?
Yeah,
Because
but
corruption means to use your
money.
power
Yeah,
to get a personal gain,
yeah.
right?
So yeah, so this
This is not corruption.
weird.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the moral corruption.
It's the moral corruption. Yeah.
That's a cheap.
But that's what they say. They say it's about the first corruption, but then when you get over the smoke screen, you go deeper on the layers that are really affecting people's decision to go after this guy. And there has been a lot of a movement against this party for a long time because they are leftists and they have leftists and they have social policies that are against, let's say, a more conservative view. And then it comes to the fake news.
Okay.
Just as with Trump, fake news are being used to make people fear all these things much more than they already feared because of prejudices that all of us we have prejudices about different things that we are not even aware.
Yeah.
With fake
They
news,
trigger the
yeah, they
prejudice.
trigger it. The fake news triggers and radicalizes your fear. One of the things they do with the other candidate, which is also from the same party,
What's the name?
Haddad.
Haddad.
Yeah, he was the former mayor of São Paulo in the city. One of the fake news, for instance, is a quote. There's a photo and a quote.
So what works?
Children's sexuality is ours to decide. We tell them what they are gonna become,
Okay.
and that's like the quote, a quote that he never said.
Yeah.
But because homophobia is, of course, part of people's imagination,
Yeah.
Catholic, Christian imagination, they fall into that without checking the information, without checking if that's true. So there's a lot of misinformation that's happening. And I think in this election, this is the most important thing, not because of Brazil, but because it's a global situation.
Yeah.
There is a big cycle that I think it's going on right now globally with the rise of the internet and social media, because
positive one or a positive?
it started, in my view, with a positive one, but it was very easily co-opted nowadays to a bad one.
Yeah.
By who?
It's huge.
So you guys remember when Facebook really started booming? The first reactions were, like freedom movements all over the world.
Speech, free internet. Yeah.
No, and Arab Spring.
Yes.
Like
Arab
fight
Spring,
against
yeah.
dictatorships, fight against authoritarian
Authoritarian regimes.
in different countries. Even in Brazil, I remember I participated in one which was against corruption, of course, as a whole, but also it started with violence, brutality against protesters. After that, and this was all at the same time, it was Arab Spring 2012 or 11.
Yeah, 11, 12, yeah.
Brazil 2013 and many others. And then you have Occupy Wall Street. You had
Yes.
all over the world
Yes,
these Occupy
other-
movements. And these, I think, is the first wave of, human rights defenders using the tool of social media as a way to promote freedom of speech
and to organize
themselves.
themselves quicker and to move, and to express their messages.
When they achieved that, the other side realized, oh wait,
this is dangerous, huh?
This is dangerous, and we can use it for our own gain.
Yeah.
That's even why in Egypt there was this big thing with the Muslim Brotherhood, because they used the same protest they had there. That was completely it was just against the dictatorship, and the Brotherhood wanted to put a theocratic regime.
Yeah.
So in the end, the people who were protesting against the dictatorship had an election, and they voted to stay on the dictatorship.
Yeah.
Because they were afraid of a theocratic regime where no other freedoms would be allowed.
Yeah.
And that's still they're still on that regime on the
They
in
were
Egypt.
briefly ruled by the military, and then that election.
And so I think in Brazil the same thing happened. We had a strong protest movement in 2013 against police brutality that quickly was changed to be against corruption, because there was a general against corruption in a way.
It's something that unites you in a way.
Unites
when you
you,
say
yeah.
against corruption, as you said, everybody's against corruption.
Everybody's
You've
against.
experienced it your whole life, and also in Bulgaria, most of the protests are against corruption.
Yeah. But that, it was mostly about the system of corruption that dominates Brazilian politics. But it was, like in the news, it was very quickly turned to it's a protest against the president.
Oh, okay. So
It's against
reframed,
the party's corruption. Ever since this feeling of being against this party has been absolutely skyrocketing. Because it was not, like the person, I was really in the starting phase of that protest on Facebook, and then later on the protest.
Like,
share.
Yeah, the word is better now.
Yeah, let's go back to how it was. And then 2 years later, we had a new wave of protests. This time, older people, whiter people, wealthier people protesting. It was this one my father went to, for instance.
Okay.
Oh my.
Because on the one that I went, my family didn't want to go.
Oh,
but
did you?
then, no, because it was too broad, I guess.
Okay.
When it was against the party, this
I did
government that they didn't like already for many years, because it's a communist government, it's trying to take over and become Venezuela and stuff like that, they went.
Oh, okay.
So, to me it's very clear, like this kind of step by step that's going on. And then we had the impeachment. The impeachment was also a continuation of this narrative of we had to take her out, because also there was an investigation that was taking down traditional politicians again in corruption cases. But that was the good side of of this, which was having also a thing that I see that's a good thing from the past governments, these ones in particular. They were good in maintaining the institutions in a way that, the Brazilian FBI was free enough to investigate who they had to investigate, be it politicians or not, So this is something that I feel
they were independent enough in order to do it. Okay.
And this, in my view, they think they say that they want to continue this. But in my view, all this, the impeachment, and now this guy coming in, to me, it's just a way to shut down all possibility of
everything that had emerged for a bit of expressing your
of all the freedom of all the institutions, the balance of institutions, of the three powers. So now it's just complete chaos. The judiciary does one thing, the political I think that the lesson that when I was thinking about talking to you, because this has been a very sad moment for me.
Yeah, good.
And to all my friends who are gays and who are lesbians.
Kind of saw the hope and the light, how things are changing for some time, and a very important time for you because you're in your 20s, so you imagine that, that would actually really maybe I'll have a chance, to have my life in Brazil in a normal way or whatever. And then you kind of see that it's actually, maybe it would be lost. Yeah.
Yes, and what makes me sad is not that this guy exists, but it's that people who love me and say who love me are on his side, you know. Yeah. People who say that they are with us until the end, who know our story, who know the things that we have gone through, and then the things that happen to us, like after that case that I told you in school, marriage was legalized. I mean, marriage was allowed for gay people. Schools were having better treatment with bullying, so things were getting better. And now they say this is not important.
It's not it.
My brother said that this is not important.
What is important?
But why?
We have to go against corruption. When corruption ends, everything is gonna be good, even for you. That's his way of thinking. But the thing is, human rights is never a priority. In any case, because there's always a crisis. There's always a crisis of different sort. There is economic crisis. Let's think about it when
this is solved.
This is solved.
This is the biggest problem, so we solve it, and then we'll pay attention to that.
But the thing is, human rights and equality for women, for men, for LGBT, it's a choice. It doesn't depend on crisis or nothing. It's just a choice to say. It's just a choice to say this is going to be a priority. Doesn't matter what's going on. It doesn't take a lot of money. It just takes will to say this is gonna. I want people to be equal. So now we're in a moment where they're saying this is not important. You only think about homophobia. That's like what I've heard, what I've been hearing. You only think about homophobia. We have much more worse issues. You're living abroad. You have no idea what's going on here. But I have lived there my whole life, and I have friends who are living there, and they are suffering, and they're feeling how tighter it's getting, like the fear of going back to the closet, of being afraid of just being a couple, a regular couple living together. It's scary, but the good thing, I feel we're coming together. Like this, we have to come together, otherwise we're not going to be able stronger. Together, we're stronger, and that's like.
And I don't think that everything can be lost. I mean, even if the politics change now, even if like a more conservative view comes. I mean, no, I don't know. Maybe this is my hopeful, idealistic vision, but I feel that if a society makes a step to move toward more openness. Even if the fucking politics and laws change, something is left there in the minds of the people. So, I hope so. At least,
my biggest fear is just that because people think that we cannot go backwards, like you're saying. But just think about Russia. In terms of gay or LGBT rights. Think about Russia. They were okay for a while. We have Tattoo from TATU from Russia. Do you remember TATU?
No.
Okay, then I'll send you that.
No, I don't remember. And now they're not because...
No, it's criminal. It's criminalized. You can be gay in your private life.
Oh, okay.
But you have absolutely no rights in terms of marriage. And you cannot make any... There's a law that's called Law Against... LGBT propaganda. And if you by any chance are walking in the street in Russia and you have a flag, you are going to jail. That's propaganda.
No, because if I have to be completely honest, I see some things that could be considered a propaganda. For example, or I don't know. I mean, for example, now on social media I see a lot of you know, like for example, children, you know, like they're 10 years old in the US at least. If they decide they can get hormone injections, if they decide they can get pills and stuff like that. And I believe that we should, of course, I mean, we should respect the self-expression, and we should absolutely, you know, give the freedom to kids as well and to people to self-express. But some decisions which are very important decisions, like for example changing my genitals, or going through an operation, going through a hormone, you know, treatment and everything, should be considered as really major decision that a person can do once you're mature enough to really take it. So in that terms, there is something that could be, because I see how, but you know, but it's normal. I mean, each topic which is important, and I do believe that this equality, you know, and understanding the position of others is a very important topic. It gets distorted as well a little bit, and then you see how, you know, like also some too extreme things are, you know, out there, and then at the same time this kind of distorts the real problem, because there is something really real there that we have to talk about, and it gets attacked from, you know, like going into too much the extremes. And I think this confuses the people, while we just need some basic human stories, which for example are your story that you told right now, because it really surprises me. And to be honest now, because also they say, for example, Bulgarians, they say, oh, Eastern Europe, you're so conservative, you know, you're homophobic, and to be honest, I do think we are, you know, a bit homophobic. I mean, the society in general, I think. But now, as you told your story, I make a parallel, you know, with my high school experience, and this didn't happen. We had one person. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, I won't mention him anyway. But we had, you know, he was our friends circles and everything. Then it turned out that he's gay, and okay, there were some jokes, but more like friendly jokes, you know, but never such a reaction. Never. And we were as well 15, 16 years old, and then we found out, you know, that he actually was, and never. This really very much surprises me, and I think this is a basic humane story that we have to go through such stories in order to show people this is really important, you know, because you know, people are going through such difficult times, and that's the problem with the online space and all of these campaigns and all of these issues, that they get very, very distorted for interest, basically, for funding, for interest, from campaigns, from big groups, and then we forget exactly this, actually the human part behind it, and
That's true.
just
We end up
problem.
talking in extremes. Right?
And we end up talking in extremes. Oh, you're changing the, you know, the gender of my kids, or you know, I mean,
It's because there is like a big thing by granting rights to people who want those rights, doesn't take away from others people's rights. It's just a new right for people who need it, who want it. Nobody's obliged to do anything they don't want. Like,
that's exactly the fine
like
line.
even like the thing that you said, I really cannot speak about transgender issues, because of course I'm not transgender and I don't have that many close friends who are. But I feel it's like each parent and kid will decide, but if you don't even have the choice, it's discriminatory, you know, because of course it's a big decision. Of course it's a strong situation. I don't think anybody takes it lightly, you know, like, and even if they do, so many people do things lightly. You know, like I have this uncle. He's really in my opinion a little bit of a bad person, but he's allowed to have as many children as he wants, just because he's straight, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
Just because he's a straight man, he doesn't pay for nothing. He never took care of any of his children. But just because he's straight, he can have whatever he wants in terms of family. If it's the
thing of rights, though, right? That's more a thing of physical capability.
No, but we might have as many. We might be better parents, let's say. But just because we are a gay couple or a gay person, you might not be able to have a family, adopt a kid.
Not
or
everywhere it's allowed.
I see where you're coming from, but it's also a difficult question actually, because it's a right, but this is actually something that is taking away, because the number of children is also a limited thing. So the people who decide on the children, they make this decision because of course they're biased or not biased, but I believe if they say, okay, you have a gay couple, they're caring people, they're good people, but you would also have a heterosexual couple, they would naturally tend towards giving it to the heterosexual parents just because you have the two different genders.
Yeah.
Right, and that goes a bit away from what you say about your uncle, because for him it's just very easy to make children, you know. That's what I want to express in the end.
But he can be a father regardless.
This will be a real problem as well, because there are many more children that are actually in foster homes and requiring. There is a whole other topic of adoption and how complicated it is, and how actually there are children out there sitting and needing parents, and there are many parents on the line waiting. I mean, this is something like a bit of the issue. Like, we have so many homeless people, and at the same time we have homes that are abandoned, you know, apartments and everything, and it's the same problem, you know. So actually there are many children out there in need, you know, of a family, many more than couples, you know, who would compete who to adopt the child.
But didn't we talk about this the other day, and the thing is that even if you want to adopt a child, you wait for years. It's a year-long procedure, right?
It's a year-long procedure because of the bureaucracy, because of the evaluation, and because of not because there are so few children and you have to kind of be chosen one to take it, but because the system of adopting a child is really so complicated, and that's why the foster homes are filled with children that are alone there and waiting for a family, and there are many couples that are waiting for adoption, and you know, it takes years. It's just that it's a break in the whole bureau, because of course I don't have the solution for that, because of course you need to do a lot of evaluation. You need to be sure that this home climate is healthy, it's a good one, and blah, blah. But there is a problem there in terms of matching simply things. Otherwise, there are many kids that even grow up, you know, they go to foster homes when they're 2, and then nobody adopts them, never leaves, and they live their whole life there. And it's
I see what you mean.
So
I
you
see
see your argument that for the heterosexual couple and the homosexual, it's not valid exactly because there are enough children that need home there.
I guess, yeah, but you're also missing my point, because I believe that if your uncle was for some reason not able to have children, and if he wanted to adopt children, he wouldn't be a person who would get many children because he doesn't have the personality, you know. But because he is physically able to make children, and then it would be a question. Okay, if you say he wouldn't be a good father,
I'm not thinking. I'm not saying about necessarily. Yeah, sorry.
Because the point is, then it would be the question, okay, of people who shouldn't be parents, of stopping them from having children. And that's a whole other debate. That's my point.
Of course,
you know, it can be a shitty person, but just for him it's easy to have children. That's what I mean.
Yeah, because it doesn't depend.
What I meant was not. I mean, anybody can have as many children as they want. I'm just saying the sense of that there is not a social judgment in that sense of letting him be a father, even if he is a murderer. Like, I don't know if he. I'm not saying he is.
Wait, are you blinking? Is that a code, Danny? He's actually a
No, I mean, anybody can have a child, you know, like if they want. But there's no law saying you cannot be, you know.
Yes.
But there
Except
is.
in China, excuse me.
Yeah.
And they even abolished that one.
They abolished it.
But yeah, anyway.
No, but absolutely.
You're right.
No, I understand your point, and I agree with it. I mean, and that's exactly, I think, the fine line that we should. I mean, I don't know whether it's that fine, because for me it's not that fine, but others claim that it's very fine line. But I mean, creating rights that actually empower people and not restrict others. I mean, this is super logical. I mean, I don't know. I never understood. I swear, I don't understand the problem with having actually a marriage. You know, when you're gay, I really don't understand. What could be the problem? What does it affect you? You can marry.
Nobody participates in anybody's
your wife,
sexual life.
Yeah, exactly. You marry a cow. You marry whatever. What would actually impact you? For example, we don't like the marriage thing, you know, in general as a tradition, we won't get married. I mean, this is our own choice.
Exactly, but you have the choice to decide.
Yes, exactly. Somebody else
That's
like
the discrimination.
Well, then take it. I mean, it's yours.
It's yours.
I don't understand how could ever this could ever be an issue.
I don't think I want to adopt children anytime soon either, and I don't think we think about it. But
Maybe
if it's
one day,
restricted, the right, then it's discriminatory.
Yeah, then you already feel weird about it. 'Cause you don't have a
Like,
choice.
why not?
Yeah.
But talking back about the elections, this guy, just to tell you how he became famous. He became famous by two things. One, by going against this, that he created the name the gay kit, which he claimed was a kit to be put in schools so that
people gay?
to make people gay.
But I don't follow even what that's supposed to.
Some tactics
How
that
does-
lure you
He says
in your
it's a gay
kit.
it's a gay
kit.
book.
What is it?
It's
Like a program, or
That's his accusation, that the government, the communist government,
Yeah.
was trying to turn kids gay in school
Yeah.
by having this. But this is all the fake news. These are all the lies. Because it was a kind of a document directed for teachers. To train the teachers so they have this kind of background. They carry prejudices also.
Yes. Yeah.
So they would train the teachers, so the teachers would be better prepared to deal with differences
With cases, yeah.
in
with something
school. Like,
happens,
it doesn't necessarily be gay. It could be all kinds of differences in school.
Yeah, I suppose it could be also some form of anxiety, for example, or people like
or basic
kids with
training
different-
for how to handle children.
How to handle, yeah.
But then he distorted the whole thing, and this created a big, political stuff on Facebook, and then it projected him to be known again, the person who is against the gay.
And have you seen this kind of like the document that
He takes it everywhere. Yeah, he takes it.
Public?
Yeah, it's public.
And it's a normal, way of because that's what I said. That it's so complicated. Everything goes to the extremes. For example, in the UK, they have a school in a smaller town where they stopped now addressing children with she and he.
Yeah.
It was kind of an experiment, or no, it's still ongoing. I believe it's just they changed it, And and those are very small kids though. They're like it was I think from in the preschool and then the school, the first class. So let's say the age group between 4 and 8, and they stopped addressing them completely with she and he. They used only this form of they, and like they, and it's and they don't use any human toys. Then they don't use like a Barbie
Gender neutral
or whatever.
toys.
It's a completely gender neutral, which in a way for me is too much. I don't understand why it's necessary. I think that you can actually show people that they can respect themselves by still keeping their identity and normal. It doesn't. I don't understand it. So this is, for example, I'm sure that what you're saying about this gay kid or whatever, which sounds ridiculous. I'm sure that it wasn't such type of a thing. It was just, I suppose, a general training for really respecting a more.
But I think I thought it was also trying to make the teachers, for instance, there is a kid who wants to play with a Barbie, and he's a boy and wants to play with a Barbie.
That's okay.
In general, I think teachers would say, no, this is a girl's toy, you cannot play with it, There is this kind of...
Because I don't...
Yeah.
Because from my experience from this homophobic country that I come from, and where they... Because they, in the EU, they really tell us that we're Europeans homophobes, and now we had a big debate about the Istanbul Convention, and because we didn't ratify it, and they were like, homophobes, Bulgarians, whatever. So from my homophobic country, I've been playing with Lego quite a lot, and like with car toys as well. Also with Barbies, but also never heard anything about it. I have been, because I've been going to the crash and the kindergarten since I'm 9 months old. Nobody ever and I remember some boys who were also like playing with us and with some part. Never had. Is that a real problem? Do the people really?
I always had it.
Yes.
I can hardly relate. I can also not relate.
I relate it very strongly.
You should not, play. You should not dress.
Very much so, indeed.
That's a strong difference between cultures.
I guess it's a strong difference.
Because also what you mentioned with UK, there are also similar things from Germany where they try to introduce sexual education to classes with 6 to 9-year-olds, and then with 8 or 9 they start to explore alternative sexualities, and then but it's very visual already and very descriptive, and for me there's also already a line crossed, because when you're pre-puberty, I believe you just want to have a good time as a child.
Yeah, you don't want to be burdened with so much, into,
With any type of, I mean, as long as...
I didn't know my sexuality maybe also until I got...
I don't know.
I never thought exactly.
I always had very strong, me and my cousins. It's a thing in Brazil. like do stuff when you're kids.
Yeah,
you guys never did.
We also...
But that's sexuality. But it's just like
girls, you show your genitals and so on.
Yeah, stuff like that. But because you're recognizing yourself, it's like it's natural part of childhood. Is also saying, "Oh, I have a penis. She has a pee-pee," and stuff like that.
Yes, yeah.
But and I think that when they direct some kind of educational things to school, is in that sense, like it's just to approach certain things in terms of. Like for instance, I don't know, but this.
No, but
it's hard. Yeah,
there's a discrepancy, because there was in this German example there was some weird shit going on as well, because they also started introducing sexual toys, and they were describing what a dildo was and so on.
To 10
and then 8-9-year-old child doesn't need to know what a dildo is.
It's not necessary. You'll find out a bit later.
But this is such a strong discrepancy
I really
between
want
the
to ask something
countries.
important. Do you experience Europe, or at least here where you are, as a homophobic place?
No, I feel super freedom here.
Do you know what I think is happening, which is a big paradox, and I don't understand it? I really do believe that here in Europe, at least in Western Europe, and even in Eastern Europe, where they claim that my country is homophobic, I think we're much more open. I think we're tolerant, at least to a certain degree. Of course, more needs to be done, but at least to some very, very degree, which we could say actually well done. I mean, respectful and tolerant towards these differences, towards different sexualities. And exactly here in Europe, they're trying to introduce some weird extreme shit that actually makes people go back into the conservative state that we have overcome already. And at the same time, places like Brazil, where apparently some basic tolerant actions and respect are needed, the school environment, it's not happening. I mean, so in a way, it's a big discrepancy, because it's like, and to me, it seems like they're just trying to, really make us hate each other on the basic differences. Because here you push too far, so the people in Europe who have already acquired tolerance and we really don't care. I mean, even in school we didn't care,
Right.
It makes us, oh no, this is a bit too much, so we go actually into the previous conservative, we say, maybe we're too tolerant. And at the same time in Brazil, where it's needed, I mean, it's also...
I think there's always, there's always the, I don't know, I don't think this is... I think this is too much, or this is too... I really don't know. I think it's case by case also. And sometimes things that I react to strongly at first, I think it's always the case of, for me, because I know I've been in this situation before. If there's someone complaining about one thing, I think that it takes minimum amount just to listen and respect and try to... Because there are things that are not in detriment of me, like maybe what's the biggest effort that I'm gonna do by not telling a kid not to play with a Barbie or with a car. Like for me it makes no change, but for many different people who have had this experience, they feel this is a big change if they have the freedom to just be who themselves and play with. So there's a lot of things, like with feminism, when it comes to feminism and LGBT rights, and even in LGBT you have lesbians, gays, bis, transgender, and
the whole
each one has different demands.
Yeah.
I have no idea what it is to be a transgender person. I've never been through that. I've never had the experience that the person might have had their whole life. So I'm never gonna be... Look, for you, I think you're already going too far. I think it's, what is it that a person like you or people like you go through that I can learn and and listen to at least, because I think that a lot of people, like it's going on in Brazil, this is crazy. How can two men adopt a child? And because it just goes against their worldview, you know. But there are many things that happen, small things, you know, like toy issues or education, and then there is job. You cannot tell if you're gay. I mean, this is of course one case, but these are experiences that you guys as straight people would never go through. You know, you take your child to work sometimes, or to, you know, for me this is all wow, you know. I would think not twice, but like 5-10 times before ever telling my boss that I'm in a relationship. And that is really the case. That has happened before. I never told in my work. So these are small things that when people say, oh, I think, and also you have black people, they also have a lot of complaints about different ways of living, and they say this is affecting me in ways that you cannot understand. Like, and then I include myself because I'm not black. That you cannot understand. Can I maybe have the right? Can you maybe not say this? It's just like, or one thing. Don't touch my hair because this is disrespectful. Some people, some black people say.
Yes.
Just don't touch it. It doesn't take much effort from the side of a white person not to do it. So I think these small things, I don't think we should go case by case, even by time. But I think that people should always be open to listening why people are complaining about one or other thing.
I agree with you completely, but for me the line is when it turns into a law. You know, because for example, you still leave me the choice. For example, you tell me, please don't touch my hair because I don't like it or whatever, and I'm still left with the choice either to be a respectful and a good person, you know, and really to evaluate, or not to be, and to be the asshole on it. And the moment that it turns into a law that actually will, for example, punish me and will put me, I will be fired from my job and everything if I don't, for example, I don't know, address the person with they or something like that, and my career will be ended because I'm going to be called a Nazi or a racist or whatever. This is the line that it goes too far, and unfortunately right now, nowadays, we're experiencing this, and this distorts both sides. You know, this actually affects both sides, because neither the people who require a bit more tolerance are getting the tolerance, nor the others are able to really be the bigger person now and to value your, you know, your request. I mean, when it turns into laws, which right now it's kind of the mood, you know, in the US, this for me distorts completely because still humans should be left with a choice, no matter how funny it sounds, to be an asshole or to be a good person. This is a human choice that should be left there. And that's why I think that measures, you know, that's why I again emphasize human stories, you know, sharing your experience, saying what you went through. For example, with your story, there are many more others, and it's important because this moves the people. This is what stays with the people, and this is what will provoke some people to think twice and to say, no, I am a bigger person. I understand it. At least I try to understand this, and I'm gonna be respectful to these people. But when you say, for example, there is a law to be tolerant, to be respectful, and this is it, and you're gonna, for example, be punished if you're not, this is the moment that you actually rob out the people of the opportunity to really grow and to put themselves into the shoes of the others and to really, you know, So this is, I think, a conflict that arises right now with all of these, you know, rights or whatever. The same is with women, you know. I mean, with feminism, for example, the moment that it turns into a law to put the same quotas in a certain profession, you know, of women and men, this distorts the whole thing. I mean, it's hard for the employer to find exactly 50% women, exactly 50% men. It doesn't teach the men to be respectful toward the women because it shows them that the women get these positions on the basis of a fucking law and not because they actually deserve it. So actually the men will turn to be even more anti-feminism and anti-women rights if they work in an environment where they know that 50% of their colleagues have gotten their job only because of their gender. That's the problem with which we need to actually bridge somehow, you know. And if I explain it correctly, That's why sometimes I'm like, yes, absolutely, we need a shift, we need a mental shift, we need to be more respectful, we need to be more tolerant, but we need the right ways to really do that and not being pressured by a system that applies it, because otherwise it's not genuine. It's not. It doesn't. It's not the growth of the human.
I think I have two things. About the first one that you said about the right of if it's a law, then it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, even freedom of speech has limits.
Yes.
You know, if you say something racist, okay, ideally it would be. But if you tell someone something, you accuse the person of something, you have the choice of saying that. But the law tells you if it's a lie, you are fined by it.
Yeah.
You might have to respond in consequence to that. When it comes to hate speech or when it comes to prejudice, to racism, to homophobia, it's the same thing. Everybody has the right to tell whatever they want. But if it's something that stimulates hate, if it's something that degrades someone, might be subject to to consequences.
And I'm absolutely against it.
Yeah, and
I don't understand why this is necessary.
Yeah, but some things, like for instance, homophobia is the kind of thing that if there is no law, you might never have any kind of change, because if you say, is like one of the things in Brazil, it's this law. They wanted to criminalize homophobia, like they criminalized racism. To me, I think it's a measure that, of course, I hoped that society would change, would shift in that way, that we wouldn't need that. But it's not what's happening. On the contrary, you know, so the same way that, you know, you go in Germany and you have the Nazism, there's a law that prevents you for spreading or because this has affected and this offends people in many ways. So if you do that, you have the freedom. That's freedom of speech. But you might have reprimand, you might have like some kind of consequence, because our society doesn't accept Nazism anymore, because it has affected many people's lives. So I think this is kind of like the thing. When you come to the quota thing.
But you mean, because I didn't understand, you support having laws or not? I mean,
yes.
Because, yes.
For instance, in Brazil, they wanted to criminalize, they created a law to criminalize homophobia.
And you're against, I suppose, this law to criminalize homophobia.
I support it.
No, to hate speech against.
I'm sorry. You mean
there's a law to.
I didn't understand
against
what
hate
you.
speech against.
There is a law against the hate speech to homophobia, and then.
Yeah, like they, for instance, they wanted to have the freedom to.
How does that help you? Why people will still be homophobic?
Like
will still, for example.
I don't care if people are homophobic or not.
Okay.
You know?
Then what is
they
the
can be homophobic. The law is just, I don't have to, if I'm in a bar and I'm with my partner and by any chance I do the same thing as the couple next to me, a straight couple next to me, kiss. There is no law that protects me from being kicked out.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
So the bar owner says, no, I don't agree with that.
Okay.
Get out of here. Or I'm in the street and somebody starts, or someone doesn't hire me, or I get kicked out of a job because somebody found out I'm gay. These are concrete life experiences that are homophobic. So,
in a way, protecting
people are not changing in that direction, you know, like they just keep doing it. So I think that if you have at least a law that protects me in that sense, I want that law. The guy, I don't care if it changes people's minds. If he is homophobic, it's his right to be against gay marriage. It's his right. He has a religious belief that people should not get married. Gay people should not adopt. Gay, it's his right.
Okay.
I don't care about his opinion. I just care about me being able to be here, live my life normally, because that's also my opinion.
Yeah.
So the fact is, society by itself was not moving towards that naturally. So when there is like one possibility of going against, not organically, but let's say through the act of a government, of a law, I'm happy with that, because I know if it's not by the law, people don't care. They're gonna go and they're gonna kick me out. They're gonna go in front of my class and they're gonna call me faggot, and then if I think it's bad, get out of my school.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Yeah. No,
So, and then you have another thing about the quota. I also understand the pros and cons, but I think it's the same philosophy. Like in Brazil, they have a quota they implemented this quota for universities, for black and poor and lower class poor people to get in the university. So that's the same philosophy. They say, oh, but now you have me, just because I'm white, I have 50% of chance and not 100% of chance. What if I'm more qualified? And then the black people are just gonna get in because he's black? You have both 50%. So you have to be both qualified in that sense to get in the you have 50%, you have 50%, and why did they decide to do that?
But it's not exactly like that, because still the amount of people in proportions that, for example, will be black and poor and will get into
it's larger.
It's larger than the white people that will...
In Brazil, the majority of Brazilians, like the big part of Brazil, is black and poor.
Okay. Yeah.
But not black, right?
Yeah, it's like
African
black descendants.
Yeah.
Descendants, African descendants, like former slave descendants, people who had different origins. But because they were saying, oh, this is discriminatory, there are white poor people. Okay, so they made it black and poor, like under, if you are like poor under this limit, you can also have the quota. Why? Because the same thing, naturally, you know, like you had slavery in 1900, and until still people who always had and they have free university. That's the system in Brazil. Why? Because they had the best schools when they were growing up. So because of that, they get in. So it's like you have an academy that's 100%. Even after the end of society is going too slow, because while that's happening, the black people are not having enough ways of getting to the university, and it's not because the lack of will, it's not lack of effort, but sometimes they have to work while you know, like someone like me just studied, you know, or they had to work and study at the same time, because like I said, poor people they do. So this was an effort just to say, okay, for a while, it's a temporary, of course it's not the solution, but it's temporary, affirmative, it's experiment, so that we just insert initially
an instrument that
and makes people get access to university. When they get to the university, they're still going to have to respond to the same criteria as the other students. They're only going to have their diplomas if they are good.
But this is not the case with the Austrian military, for example, where they lower the criteria in order to have women as well, you know. In the States, okay, because the gender, because at least in Europe, you know, I can't speak. In Europe, we actually have made their interest in,
because you're already talking about genders, but I just want to
because
add
this
to
is my example. He refers to my example of the quotas, which I actually brought in terms of girls and boys here, which I really see as unnecessary, and I see how they sometimes lower the criteria exactly in order for the women to fit there, because they have the quotas and they need to fit there, and then it happens that, I mean, it's not under the same criteria, and at the same time, but this is again my experience, and I thought that I'm coming from the not that good part of Europe, but even in our, like, I mean, we're super free to choose whatever we want. Like, my grandmother was a chemist, like, my best friend's a civil engineer. I mean, I really don't think we have that problem. And I don't know, you wanted to say?
I think it's not in a lived perception, maybe, but in a systematic statistic. That's where we need to see. Like in the, let's say in the.
But women choose professions which are not. For example, in the NGO sector here, in the NGO sector here, they're predominantly women. My mom, in her organization, there are how many? 15 people. They have 2 men, and they're so happy, because they're, and it's like. That's what they choose, simply. My best friend, she studies civil engineer, so she's working with all of those rocks and blah blah in engineering. She will be building bridges, for example, one day, and she says, yeah, I mean, women are not interested into that, I just, she likes to do it, but it's something that, I mean, most of the women go into the humanitarian studies, like me, and this is, it's I don't know, I mean, what do you think about it? But I think that at least in Europe here we have achieved a level of giving information equally to both women and men, and to girls and boys, and then giving them chances equally to enroll in universities and blah blah. And we see a natural tendency of women choosing humanitarian studies, writing, speaking, NGO, human rights, and blah blah blah, and men choosing other professions which are a bit more IT, a bit more engineering, and indeed those professions, I mean, I'm sorry, but to actually discover a new physics law is a bit better paid than what I do, for example, which is to manage the social media with nice words, I mean, and I see that, and I don't think it's a discriminatory thing that requires quotas, and then that's what I see, and I wonder whether, this is again an example which for me it goes into the extremes and actually repulses people of understanding that we need absolutely equal access, equal choice, equal information, but after that there are still tendencies that occur and we can't correct it all.
Some people might come in and say, well, but what affects those choices to go to the humanitarian or to, and they say they would go back to the education, to the toys.
I was always very good in mathematics as well. I always had, for example, very good grades and in physics too, and I hated it. I hated every moment that I had to do a mathematics test or whatever. I had good grades. And everything. Absolutely the same as the literature. In literature class, I was like, just give me to speak, to analyze and to do that. And then, so what's the reason behind? I mean, it's not about, I don't know. Yeah, indeed, maybe sometimes it's under the influence of the family to some extent. Although, to be honest, people kind of wind up doing, I mean, yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Not just we could share.
Do you wanna share?
One might be too much for me.
Okay, because for me as well. So it's actually good to share. If you
but there's also a thing about that, because these quotas for women, they also came in as a way to bring diversity and to bring more women, so that women could get there and fight for their rights, fight for equality. But just the quota is not a guarantee that women who are getting there is not conservative women, and they are in fact against quotas themselves.
Yeah, that as well. Absolutely, it's not. I don't think it.
But still, it's good to have the balance, no?
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of politics, I think. I don't know about the other sectors.
I never cared about it. I mean, I never cared. For me, there's something else. If you work somewhere, it's a very good if the environment is constructive. If you can. Okay, we're here. If you can learn, from people, if they have capacity. For me, I don't care whether I'm going to work in a team with other 5 men and I'm going to be the only woman, or I'm going to work in a team where all of girls. It's about how valuable the people are the team are in this separation. I mean, I understand that in other places, such separation is necessary. I believe that, for example, in Brazil or in other countries, in South America, it might be where this
I
macho
think
culture
many women would be
in Africa, I suppose
would
it is.
support that same thing that
Yeah.
it's not necessary.
Yeah, exactly. But here in Europe, no, I just want to be acknowledged that we actually have really moved in a way past these things, and at least in the female male gender, I think we're doing pretty good, and I'm even proud of
Europe
us.
is
And I'm
definitely
saying, that's not
standard,
true. I mean,
yeah.
it's. Yeah, I know many women that were engineers in the engineering, and then you feel all this social pressure, like, no, you're not doing enough, it has to be more, it has to be the quality, and I'm saying, no, actually, we really do, we have moved forward, let's acknowledge that.
Very much. Very much.
And that's why I'm saying that it should not go to the extremes, you should go somehow through really human experiences, and... Yeah, but it's a tough question, and it's a very, very emotional. All of these topics got so emotional lately. It's like some years ago. I don't know, but I was maybe small, so I didn't see the things like that. But it was easier to lead a debate, to have a debate. It was easier to.
Yeah, I think nowadays, because of social media, it has really.
Yes.
I don't know. It reinforces world views, and people are more. They stick more to one.
My bubble is the best one.
Yeah.
Your bubble sucks, and absolutely. It's funny because, as you said, how it started with social media and how it was a tool. You're able to communicate for the first time. People from Africa were able to exchange information or have a conversation with people from Australia, so this is amazing, or to organize something commonly, and how actually now it went. I mean, it's only campaign pushed by interest, basically people hating on each other, and
there was a phrase like in the master that I'm doing now, that I was reading a text, and this guy who works with TV as media and criticizes how TV approaches certain subjects, and he says every technology creates its own catastrophe. And when you think about the creation of this it's brand new, this technology of social media and internet. What is the 21st century going to be like? Because we're just seeing the first sketches.
We're absolutely the first tryout. We're the first.
We don't know what this is gonna lead us, like in terms of radicalization of different points of views, or. So I think this is the main global trend right now that Brazil, like when you invited me for to talk about the elections, is just one more case of this global trend.
Exactly.
And I think this is going to be the biggest challenge of the 21st century, because
to see how
are we going to deal with this?
With these technologies. Yes, absolutely. In my organization, we are working on, of course, not in depth, but on kind of collecting information on how social media is used, how it affects children, how psychologically it affects you and everything. And the picture is pretty grim, to be honest. I mean, it really, people have hard time, maybe because, as you said, it's a very new thing. We have it for the last, 10 years, that it's really incorporated in our lives. And it happened so fast. 10 years ago, suddenly you have a social media created, and now, so on social media, everything depends almost on social media. Your career, no matter what you're doing, your promotion depends, your connection to your family, your self-understanding in a way. I mean, it really infiltrated us for 1 decade, and it seems like people are having a hard time to actually deal with it. Yeah.
I think I was comparing it to the invention of the Gutenberg press.
The press.
Because it's a revolution in that sense, I think.
Absolutely.
And what happened after they invented the press? It was war, Protestant against Catholics, and that's what I'm thinking about the 21st century. We start with this new technology. What are going to be the consequences of that?
Definitely. It's a wild century, but that's what happens when ideas flow freely. The world doesn't get more peaceful, but it gets more, not violent, but more differentiated. there are more things where people can disagree, and disagreement leads to sometimes to conflicts.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what is the fine line, or how much of this freedom do we allow, and where do you cross the line?
Yes.
That's what you guys were talking about, I suppose.
Yeah.
But there was something about the affirmative action that I actually wanted to introduce before I left.
Okay.
I don't know where you ended on that note. Was there
Maybe
some...
you see it and then you rewatch the
I'll look
podcast.
back and I'll see how it fits in. Because I see the point that you make about Brazil. I also believe, though, there's a strong difference in terms of where the country is at the moment, in terms of civil rights, and because in the US the affirmative action has gone so far that universities like Harvard had an internal scoring system, and that this scoring system for admission was actually racist. It was really racist as per the definition, because they ranked different races or ethnicities differently. So black people, they were scored higher, even though when they were scoring lower on the GMAT or whatever they have in the SATs, they were ranked higher just for being black, because they were disadvantaged. And, but first because black can't associate with being disadvantaged. And Asian people were actually graded down because Asians on average are more intelligent, perform better on certain tests, and therefore they were actually grading the Asians lower on the admission tests. And now a group of Asian students have actually initiated a class action suit against Harvard for exactly that, because it became public how the university was scoring. And even though objectively, the Asians of course were outperforming every other, including other white people, but they were graded down because they were doing too well in a way, and other groups were graded up. So it's really paradoxical where it can lead, because you want to do well, but wanting to do well doesn't always mean that what you do ends up being a good thing. That's why it's really... there's no solution yet. I don't have the solution.
It's such a new way of thinking also, no? Like these measures. It's also, I think, that's why I think there are so many like tryouts, that ones are good, one are bad, and maybe like with time people are gonna see what works or what we should stop doing. And
I'm for a blind process, and you will have to accept the outcomes. But that's a difficulty, because nowadays where some people advocate for equality of outcome and not for equality of chance, and they don't differentiate between the two. We were talking about affirmative action, and I was giving an example of how it can be bad, or how it can bad outcomes. No, that's my point, but if you say you want equality of possibility, you will have to accept that the outcomes won't always be equal. Like the example with Norway, that you were saying with the women choosing the professions. So you can't have both, because if you force a 50-50 thing, then you force something onto the people which you wouldn't do if they weren't forced to do it, in a way.
So you have to kind of create opportunities for people, and equal access, information and everything, but kind of let people still apply their free choice in a way.
Yes, and you have to accept the inequality that comes from that.
Exactly.
As you were making the example with the jobs.
I do believe that this is the case. It's just that also there is the other, in Europe at least, where we have really reached some level, of respect and, information spread and equality access to information and to education. Just the other side actually, like I also believe that it's so, but the other side claims that basically the choices that we make are not exactly a product of our free will, but still of conditioning, that we, because if I understand correctly, if I try to correctly interpret it, because for example you asked me why still women choose more humanitarian and the men choose more, so in a way I guess it's implied that our free choices at certain level are not exactly a product of simply our free will, but of a previous conditioning and experience that we had. So basically it's not
the people are just influenced to be this and that.
Exactly. So I guess this is an argument from the from the other side of people who claim that that's why we need the quotas and the equal, because anyway, what the choices that lead us to those things are not.
That's also blatantly untrue, though. That's
I don't know.
That's
I mean,
a strawman
I'm just saying that this is how I understand it when I have a debate or conversation on this topic.
It's not supported by data. Simply, this is
think that I don't know.
This can be explained away because Norway is the most gender equal country in the world, according to the official index. And in Norway, you have engineers that the engineering profession is 98% male.
Yeah.
Yes. There's even an official statistic by the Norwegian government where you can look it up. And in the nursing profession, it's around 98% female. That's in the number one country in terms of gender equality. On the other hand, Iran had for a while engineering studies open that were accessible to women for a while, even under the theocracy. And in the short years that they had it, the women were outnumbering the men in those studies. And after that, they actually forbid women again because there were more women than men to study engineering.
God.
So they are definitely.
Where you wouldn't expect that it's exactly like the women have all the.
But what I'm saying is that this is an easy explanation to say, okay, it's your hidden impression or the patriarchy that made you do those choices, even though your society is free. But I believe that humans are more complex than that. And they have a free will, and if you let them make their own choices, there will be a certain
giving them,
inequality.
of course, equal respect and
without saying,
and
you treat them as humans, not as this or that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really philosophical question. Philosophers have talked.
Whether we make our own free choices or whether it's a product of our
structure.
Our
structures.
But I believe you have to accept that people have some level of free will, because otherwise you end up, and that's actual communism. Because what the communists were doing was trying to create the better human that didn't need free will because he was serving a higher ideal.
Exactly, that engineering of the humans.
And they justified all sorts of use of force, trying to make the people do that, and it all led to over 100 million dead people.
And much of trauma
and that was the whole idea, and that refuted many also Marxist or some other theorists that say that the humans are a blank slate, that you can make them into anything that they want. And I believe that is pretty proven that people have some degree of defined defined properties in a way.
Yeah, it's an unconscious. My mother is a psychologist, so she talks about it. Yeah, she also doesn't believe that's 100% clean slate.
It can't be,
because there are things that we bring, we don't know.
We bring with us, right? I mean,
and there's also the fact that that's something I never understood, because I spoke once to a transgender activist, and they were strongly living on the idea, okay, the human is a blank slate and you can turn the human into anything basically. But it's ironic because the transgender people suffer so much that they exactly don't have the gender assigned that they feel as. But that means if everything is so free, then it wouldn't be a problem for a transgender person just to say, okay, now I'm this and that and that's it. There's something inherent. Exactly, there's something inherent to you that doesn't go together with what your body is, for example. But that means, okay, there was something that didn't align for you, and that's why you feel this discomfort.
Yeah, so it's not that easy actually you really bring some stuff with you.
Yeah, you can't just say.
I do think so.
I think it's a mix of biological, because it can be like a hormone, dysregulation.
But
there is also a cultural, let's say. And there is a psychological in terms of, how the mind forms in a family context and stuff like that. And different triggers from different parts of this can come in action to make it happen or not. Because it cannot happen until later on in life or...
Yeah, I agree. I think that there are at least these three factors. Maybe even if we dig deeper, maybe there will be even more. Yes, absolutely. So in a way you have a lot of free space, to change yourself, to choose and to, but at the same time, you still have some limits, and that's also something that I think that many people or our society now has it free to accept that each of us has limits. And that's not something that bad, you know. I mean, it's like, oh, we're free to do whatever. Yes, we are, but at the same time, you still work with yourself. I mean, this is you know what I have. This is what you have. This is what you have, and you can change to a certain degree, but not completely.
It's a given.
We should find a way to respect that, to see what are the opportunities behind these limits, you know, and how really to, I don't know, I mean,
if most people would be able to accept themselves, the world would be a better place. And
exactly.
just let other people be themselves.
And I'm not saying that this is an easy thing, because it's like, because there is the other notion that is now, accept yourself, be, you know, love yourself. No, loving yourself and accepting yourself could be a very tough job, most probably in most of the cases for most of the people, because like really few people are lucky, you know, to be like sort of a perfect, although this doesn't exist. So it's a tough job, it's a really hard thing, and maybe every second of your life until the end you have to deal with this job and stuff, but it's the most important job that we have to do, the most important. And if only, and this is, I think this is a good mindset. You know, I would like to teach Theo exactly this. Discover who you are, be really attentive to yourself, who you really are, and learn how to accept yourself from the beginning on. Don't even focus so much on, although of course you focus on the others, you want to be accepted by your family, by your loved one, by your culture, like in ideal situations as well. But the first thing is like, accept yourself with your limits and with your capabilities. And first discover maybe who you are, or try to discover.
Well, and don't try to validate yourself for others.
Exactly. Yeah, don't try to validate. Yeah, that as well.
Any more wisdom, Danny?
I think I could end by thanking you guys for inviting me for this.
Thank you.
It was lovely to have this amazing talk with cameras pointed at us.
How do you feel though? I mean, you're usually the person behind the camera.
Yes,
and
exactly.
now you're in front of the camera, so
it was good because I didn't have a time pressure to say it short, so
exactly.
I could be as prolix as I am.
As artistic as prolix.
And then I would also like to say that if anybody watching would like to get more information about the guide, just contact
How
me.
do people find out about your art?
Well, I have my portfolio online. It's danielcabral.org.
We'll put a link.
That'd be great.
Yes.
And I have, for the tour guide of Brussels, we have this version, and we also have I also have a special limited edition with some postcards, ironic postcards of Brussels that I did.
Cool.
That's also available, and then you can see more on the website. And there is like all the other works that I've done recently.
And grandmother, I love you. I know you're watching. Do it. I know you're
Come
gonna
to
do
Brussels
it.
and watch Danny.
Yes. No, we're gonna go. Next time when you come, we're gonna go to his exhibition.
Okay, so also if people Google Daniel Cabral with C, Cabral, and Leopold Tour, for example, they would pretty sure end up in your blog with the first hit.
Yeah, or if you put Daniel Cabral artist, you also get there.
Yeah? There's only one Daniel Cabral artist in the world?
If it's in English, yes.
Yeah.
If you put it Daniel Cabral artista in Portuguese, there are like thousands.
One A makes a difference.
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay, it was a pleasure having you, Danny.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming.
It's really a
Thank
pleasure. Bye.
Thanks for the beer.
Yes.
Bye bye.
Yeah, that's €5.
Voilà.
Expensive. Oh.